Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
Michael Cohen taking the stand again today in former President Trump's New York trial. What Trump's lawyers are expected to scrutinize Cohen about.
Audio recordings are at the center of a political battle. Republicans want them, but President Biden has asserted executive privilege over them. More on what the fuss is over.
Ukrainian forces pull back after a surprise attack by Russia last week. This as Russia's Putin meets China's Xi, strengthening ties. What does this all mean on the global stage and for the U.S.?
Bankrolling candidates, big data analytics, and deep fakes, Chinese regime tactics to influence the 2024 elections brought to light at a Senate hearing on foreign threats.
Preventing non-citizen voting. The House hears testimony on how to achieve that, as well as address other foreign interference in elections and restore American confidence.
Slovakia's prime minister is in serious but stable condition, the latest on the assassination attempt where he was shot multiple times.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Evelyn Lee in for Stephania Cox this morning. And topping our news today, former Trump fixer Michael Cohen is back on the witness stand today for more cross-examination. The defense has tried to cast him as untruthful and biased against former President Trump.
Worth noting, there will be no trial tomorrow as Trump will attend his son Barron's high school graduation. Here's
Trump at the courthouse earlier this morning.
There's no crime. It's a disgrace that it was allowed to happen. The judge, as you know, is highly conflicted, like nobody I've ever seen is conflicted. He should not be the judge. He should not be allowed to have anything to do with this case. He should be so far away from this case. Outside, if you take a look, it looks like we're Fort Knox. There's so many police and they don't allow people to come. You know, you're allowed to have friendly protests, but we're not allowed to have anything here. They have more police and more assistant DAs and DAs. I've never seen anything like it. Over what everybody, Alan Dershowitz, everybody said there's no crime here. There's no crime. Jonathan Turley, every single person, Greg Jarrett, Andy McCarthy, look, anyone you want to name, Mark Levin, great lawyer, all of them, great lawyers, great legal scholars. Every single one said there's no crime. The crime is that they're doing this case. This was a case that wasn't going to be done, and then when I announced I was running, they brought it up. They could have done it 7 years ago. This could have been brought 7 years ago, but they wanted it right smack in the middle of election. These are very dishonest people that we're dealing with. But outside, it's like Fort Knox. You can't get within 3 blocks of this place if you're a civilian. And it's a shame what they're doing. What they're doing in terms of suppression and election interference is... We have quite a few congressmen. I guess you'll be talking to them in a little while. But I want to thank you very much for coming. At least we're getting the word out, but it's very unfair. I'd like to be in these various states where I should be campaigning like anybody else. This is Biden trial.
Trump's lawyers are likely to zero in on Cohen's explanations for pleading guilty to tax evasion. When Michael Cohen spoke during a trial in October, he admitted to lying about tax evasion charges to protect his family.
In about 2 hours of cross-examination on Tuesday, defense lawyer Todd Blanche sought to portray the prosecution's star witness as a serial liar. Blanche implied that Cohen was falsely implicating his former boss to exact revenge.
The lawyer also argued that Cohen wanted to make money off his books and podcasts that are highly critical of Trump. Blanche used Cohen's own words to paint him as unreliably biased against Trump. And Russia and China continue to strengthen their so-called no-limit partnership. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China, meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping.
Putin and Xi in Beijing today pledged to deepen their strategic partnership as Russian troops advance in Ukraine.
Beijing continues to supply Moscow with high-tech components for weapon production to bypass Western sanctions. It also buys the bulk of sanctioned Russian oil.
Russia-China military ties have also tightened. Joint war games have been held involving troops, naval drills, and long-range bomber patrols. Putin says he will discuss the war in Ukraine with Xi later today.
This is Putin and Xi's fourth face-to-face meeting since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Xi declared what he called a no-limits partnership with Putin just weeks before the war started over 2 years ago. The Chinese regime's authoritarian model crushes political opposition, human rights, and freedom of speech.
And honing in on the Russia-Ukraine war, we're joined by Tommy Waller, President and CEO at the Center for Security Policy. Tommy, thank you so much for joining us. Vladimir Putin is making a visit to China today. What does this visit say about the relationship between these two nations?
Yeah, so Chris, this visit is actually unprecedented in terms of its speed and its size, right? So we got to rewind the clock back just a week and understand that Vladimir Putin was inaugurated again for another 6 years as term as president of Russia. And he's making this visit within a week. Most new presidents around the world, if they're going to visit, it is customary, of course, to visit other nations, especially your allies. But it normally happens within a month, maybe 2-3 months. This happened in a week. And the size of the delegation that President Putin took with him to Russia is also unprecedented.
Yeah, like you're saying, for Putin to make this visit to China within 1 week of his inauguration does seem incredibly fast. You don't usually see that. And for him to take such a large delegation also seems unprecedented. Was there anything else unique about the first week of Putin's newest term as president, given all this?
There is, yeah. And Chris, let me just say that where does this insight come from? Our Center for Security Policy, our expert on Russia, Andrei Ilarionov, actually worked for Vladimir Putin for 6 years, publicly resigned from the Putin regime many years ago. And so we have a unique insight to this. And what Andrei was telling me yesterday was that a delegation of 6 or 8 people is much larger than normal. Normally, you might have 1 or 2 delegates come with a new president. This is a huge group. What that means, what that signals, is Putin's desire to really engage with China in a very, very strategic and consistent way. But to get to the question you just asked, what else is unprecedented? The appointment of a new defense minister in Russia by Vladimir Putin immediately after his inauguration is something else that should be known by the world, by the American people.
Yeah, what should we know about Vladimir Putin's new defense minister, Andrei Bolyshov?
So a lot of folks that do know any history about the new defense minister might say that, well, he didn't come from the military, right? So maybe he's got kind of a softer approach on, say, for example, the war in Ukraine, or just sort of what we see in Putin's imperialistic goals, really. But that would be far from the truth. Our employee, Andrei Ilarionov, actually has known him for 30 years and knows that he is imperialistic, he's aggressive, he's what's known as a statist, right? Someone who in Russia is very interested in state power and has an imperial outlook. So what that tells us is that what we can probably expect from Russia is more of the same aggression. And it's also notable that it only took 2 days after Vladimir Putin nominated this man to be his defense minister for the Russian parliament to basically confirm him. That's lightning speed. And there were a lot of very, very important and really ominous meetings that took place before this new defense minister and the president of Russia stepped on the airplane to fly to Beijing.
What should we know about these meetings?
So just days, we're talking 2 days ago, Vladimir Putin and his new defense minister assembled all of the territorial military commanders of the Russian Federation, right? So we're not talking about like the head of the Air Force, the Navy. We're talking about those commanders that govern different territories all around Russia. They all came together for a meeting. That's never happened, as far as we know, even since the invasion of Ukraine. That's notable. That's a big deal. And the second thing is that immediately following that meeting, Vladimir Putin and his new defense minister met with all of the leaders of all of Russia's military-industrial complex. And then a number of these leaders are part of the delegation headed to China. So because we see this unprecedented speed with the relationship between Putin and Xi in China, and the visit, and then the type of people, the number of people, the composition and disposition of the group headed to China, we're very concerned about what that may portend for the world, really, with this alliance.
All right, Tommy Waller, President and CEO at the Center for Security Policy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Switching gears to President Biden, he's asserting executive privilege over interview recordings with Special Counsel Robert Hur. The move comes as House Republicans are taking their first steps in their contempt of Congress proceedings against Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Republicans want the Justice Department to turn over the recordings as part of their impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The interviews focused on classified documents.
The Justice Department has made some of the subpoenaed materials available to House Republicans. That includes transcripts of the special counsel's interviews with Biden, but it has doubled down on its decision not to release the audio files of the interviews.
And Slovakia's prime minister is now in stable condition after an attempted assassination, but officials say it's still very serious. We also know that a suspect was charged with attempted murder. Prime Minister Robert Fico was shot multiple times on Wednesday. He was on the street greeting the public after a government meeting.
The country's interior minister said an early investigation showed the suspect had political motives, but later described him as a lone wolf with no membership in a political group.
Slovakia's state broadcaster said the suspect was a senior citizen amateur writer who wrote poetry and novels.
Slovakian politicians are urging unity among each other. European leaders, including the presidents of both Ukraine and Russia, have condemned the attack.
And a floating pier built by U.S. troops will soon allow delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. According to U.S. Central Command, the pier traveled yesterday from the port of Ashdod about 30 miles away. Personnel anchored the floating pier to a beach in Gaza.
CENTCOM's deputy commander stressed yesterday the pier is not intended to replace land routes into Gaza and said there would be no U.S. military boots on the ground in Gaza. Trucks are expected to begin moving the humanitarian aid ashore in the coming days. The United Nations and World Food Program will distribute the aid. Anti-Israel protesters occupied the University of California, Irvine's library and set up a protest camp yesterday. Police arrived on campus grounds as students were holding Palestinian flags and signs.
Some signs calling for the university to divest from its relationships with Israel. Police later clashed with the protesters who occupied a building. About 200 to 300 protesters surrounded the UC Irvine lecture hall at a time when no classes were in session. Police detained at least a dozen demonstrators as they cleared the encampment.
And California State University has placed Sonoma State Campus President Mike Lee on leave. The move followed his decision to give in to the demands of protesters and consider divesting from Israel.
Lee announced concessions to an anti-Israel encampment without proper approval. Lee also proposed an academic boycott of Israel and collaboration with activist groups for decision-making. And about the Chinese Communist Party, a new report links the Chinese Communist Party to the anti-Israel protests that have been taking place in the U.S. since after the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the findings published by the Network Contagion Research Institute.
The report analyzes the activities and foreign relationships of the Shut It Down for Palestine movement since its formation in October 2023. It describes the group as an anti-capitalist, anti-police, and anti-government protest movement. The report says Shut It Down for Palestine functions as a network for organizing frequent demonstrations and using direct action campaigns to target critical infrastructure and public spaces. The report says members of the Singham network operate under the Shut It Down for Palestine umbrella. The Singham network is a global web of nonprofits, financial sponsors, and alternative news sources connected to Neville Roy Singham. The New York Times wrote in April 2023 that the socialist Singham, quote, works closely with the Chinese government media machine and is financing its propaganda worldwide. The Jerusalem Post wrote that Singham worked as a consultant for Huawei, lives in Shanghai, and shared office premises with a Chinese propaganda firm. He has also reportedly been spotted at CCP workshops and has been investigated by the US, Canada, and India for CCP operations. According to the New York Times, Singham denies working for any political party or government and says he is guided only by his own beliefs and long-held personal views. The report says the Singham network exploits regulatory loopholes in the US nonprofit system to move giant sums of money to organizations and movements that actively stoke social unrest at the grassroots level. According to the report, Shut It Down for Palestine has ties to extremist groups that embrace a violent single-state resolution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The report says the recent protests seem focused on Israel, but they are part of a well-funded initiative driving a revolutionary anti-government and anti-capitalist agenda. Senator Mark Rubio told Fox News Digital that he warned the Biden administration of the ties between the Chinese Communist Party and certain far-left organizations operating in the U.S. The report calls for more accountability from nonprofits to ensure that they are not exploiting their position to support terrorist activities or enhance the agendas of foreign powers that are hostile to the United States. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
NTD reached out to Shut It Down for Palestine for a comment on their alleged ties to extremist groups, but we did not hear back from them yet. We're heading to break. It's been 70 years since the landmark Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case. President Biden will meet with family members of the plaintiffs today. What could be behind the visit?
And Republicans prioritizing support for law enforcement this National Police Week. How the House voted on 3 new crime bills. That and more when we return on NTD News.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
The 2024 NTD 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place at Merkin Hall, Kaufman Music Center in New York from September 18th to 21st. The competition specially invites vocalists from the world-famous Shenyun Performing Arts to serve as judges. The prestigious Gold Award is $10,000. Chinese vocal artists aged 18 to 50 are welcome to register.
Welcome back. A barge slammed into a bridge in Galveston, Texas yesterday, causing some structural damage and spilling oil into a Gulf Coast bay. No injuries were reported. Officials said the accident happened after a tugboat operator lost control. The traffic over the bridge has been reduced.
President Biden commemorating the Supreme Court case Brown v. Board of Education. The case outlawed racial segregation in American public schools. Biden is meeting today with family members of the plaintiffs in the 1954 case.
Biden will commemorate 70 years since the ruling took place at a meeting in the Oval Office.
The White House says Biden will meet with Cheryl Brown Henderson, whose father, Oliver Brown, was the lead plaintiff in Brown v. Board.
President Biden says racial equity is a priority of his administration. The president has seen his approval among some black voters slip. His campaign seeks to shore up their support.
In a unanimous 1954 decision, the court ruled in Brown v. the Board that racial segregation was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution's 14th Amendment.
The Supreme Court has just issued a decision on Louisiana's redistricting. It ordered the state yesterday to hold the 2024 elections using a congressional map with an additional mostly black district. 2 of the state's 6 congressional districts now have majority black populations. This potentially boosts Democrats' chances of gaining 1 more House seat from Louisiana.
A lower court previously ruled the map an illegal racial gerrymander. The Supreme Court's order does not address the lower court's ruling. Instead, it only prevents another new map from being drawn for this year's elections.
And the director of national intelligence says China is growing increasingly confident in its ability to influence elections.
A Senate hearing on foreign threats to the 2024 elections exposed Chinese regime tactics being used in the U.S. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has takeaways from the hearing.
Slowing down the degree to which
a Senate hearing Wednesday on foreign threats to the 2024 elections exposed tactics the Chinese Communist Party is using to influence public opinion in elections in the U.S. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines says the CCP has perfected influence operation tools through AI and big data analytics.
I think they're growing, we assess, really increasingly confident in their ability to influence elections, but remain concerned about the possibility of blowback should they be discovered.
Haines says Beijing targeted congressional candidates to meddle with U.S. elections and exerted influence over elections in Canada, Australia, and Taiwan. The National Intelligence Director says global tactics include bankrolling candidates, using deep fakes, and collecting polling data to find targets. She says China's military will take over and operate social media accounts on different platforms.
When we get intelligence that indicates that the PRC is, for example, taking on social media accounts or things like that in a platform, we then pass that information through. The FBI is able to provide that to the companies to take action.
The Chinese Communist Party in January during Taiwan's presidential election swarmed the internet with AI-generated videos, audio clips, and texts. Chinese regime operatives drove false claims on YouTube and TikTok, suggesting the party more critical of Beijing cheated with the United States' help. Senator Angus King says he doesn't want the U.S. to become the truth police. He wants attribution of sources, so people know if information is coming from a foreign government. Senator James Langford agreed attribution is the challenge. He asked Haines what's being done to stop influence operations in the 2024 elections.
We are identifying specific, credible intelligence. We are passing that to the companies or exposing it publicly as the case may determine.
In Canada, a government commission on foreign interference this month named China as the most persistent and sophisticated foreign influence threat to the country. The commission's report says the CCP's long-term game includes incentives like paid trips, business opportunities, prestigious invitations, and political support, along with disincentives like visa denials, harassment, and intimidation to retaliate if a candidate doesn't play along. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The Republican Party is making crime a top issue this election. The House passed 3 bills yesterday in support of law enforcement as Republicans call for bipartisan backing for police.
Republicans are highlighting crime as a central issue for voters during National Police Week. On Wednesday, the House approved 3 bills to support and protect law enforcement officials.
And this week we pay tribute to those who do clothe themselves with that dignity and decency and who stand on the lines of justice and keep us safe. So as Leader Scalise mentioned, we'll be passing legislation on the floor to make that clear.
The first of these, dubbed the Detain and Deport Illegal Aliens Who Assault Cops Act, passed with a 265 to 148 vote. The second, the DC Crimes Act, would lower DC's youth offender status from 22 to below 18. It passed 225 to 181. A majority of Democrats voted no to these 2 bills. Speaker Johnson held a press conference Wednesday in which he said the Biden administration had adopted a pro-crime agenda.
An FBI report just yesterday has reported that the rate of assaults on law enforcement officers in America is at a 10-year high. We have got to reverse that. That anybody who's not involved in the radical, woke, progressive left understands clearly that you got to maintain the peace.
Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar argued their lack of cooperation with the GOP came down to some Republicans defending January 6th detainees. He told reporters that Republicans, quote, will stand with some law enforcement, but they won't stand with others. A third bill, the Improving Law Enforcement Officer Safety and Wellness Through Data Act, passed with bipartisan support. Under it, the Attorney General would have to submit a report on violent attacks on police officers.
The purpose of our hearing.
The House Homeland Security Committee Wednesday held a hearing on how law enforcement officers should be supported. Democratic Ranking Member Benny Thompson questioned law enforcement on gun control and universal background checks to reduce gun violence. Virginia Sheriff Mike Chapman suggested no amount of legislation will keep guns out of the hands of bad actors.
And so you can do whatever you want. The fact of the matter is, I think we've got to hold these people accountable that use guns in crimes and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, rather than constantly trying to change laws that are really only going to impact the honest citizen buying a gun. So.
Austin Police Association President Michael Bullock suggested defunding police departments is responsible for a shortage of officers and an increase in crime.
It's pretty quantifiable because we've seen every year since this started, in particular back in 2018, we've lost more officers than we've been able to recruit. So it has a very definitive impact on those numbers. As far as morale goes, it takes a very heavy toll on officers to try to maintain the same level of service that our community expects and deserves.
Crime will be a top issue this November. Both Republican and Democratic voters are increasingly seeing it as a priority this election.
A federal judge will not shorten the prison sentence for former White House advisor Peter Navarro. Navarro is in prison for contempt of Congress after defying a subpoena from the House January 6th committee.
Navarro asked a D.C. district judge last week to allow him to cut 30 days off his 4-month prison sentence. He asked for 30 days of supervised release instead. Navarro cited the First Step Act. The judge rejected that request yesterday.
Navarro reported to a Florida federal prison in March after the Supreme Court rejected his appeals.
From state-backed hacking to stealing advanced U.S. technologies, a House hearing explores the increasing cyber threats posed by Communist China Here are the details.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my observations.
The House Oversight Committee on Wednesday sat down with Intel experts to discuss solutions to Beijing's cyber warfare. The hearing comes as U.S. and UK officials are sounding the alarm over rising cyber threats from communist China.
In fact, if you took every single one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts and focused them exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1.
From unfair trade practices to advanced technologies to transnational repression, the Chinese Communist Party is reaching its hands into every sphere of U.S. society.
Sophisticated surveillance balloons across our sovereign land, technical surveillance stations just 90 miles away in Cuba, maritime port threats, Huawei, strategic land purchases near military installations, fentanyl. I'm not even addressing space, deepfakes, or 5G or genomics.
Earlier this year, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned of a Chinese state-backed hacking campaign named Volt Typhoon. The group reportedly targeted critical U.S. infrastructures including oil pipelines, water treatment plants, and telecommunications. Testifying before the House Select Committee on the CCP, Wray said the goal of the operation was to, quote, wreak havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of its choosing.
It's estimated that 80% of American adults have had all of their data stolen by the Communist Party of China. The other 20%, just most of their data. Add in the CCP's crippling stranglehold onto so many critical aspects of our supply chain, and what results is domestic vulnerability we have not seen in generations, if ever.
Last September, Chinese state-backed hackers reportedly breached multiple U.S. government agencies and stole roughly 60,000 emails from State Department officials. It took place just before Secretary of State Antony Blinken's China visit.
The attackers accessed the inboxes of the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the U.S. Ambassador to China, Congressman Don Bacon, and key State Department employees.
Experts said the federal government needs to incentivize updates in the cybersecurity space. They said in doing so, it would encourage the private sector to do the same. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And when we come back, we'll take a look at a House hearing on non-citizens voting. The focus is ensuring foreign nationals can't vote in U.S. elections. Tune in after the break here on NTD News.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I had heard many times that heart disease is the #1 killer. It went in one ear and out the other, frankly. I never had a health issue. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. But a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. By the time I got to the ER, the doctor decided to give me a CAT scan. He said, "I don't think you understand. You are on the verge of a heart attack." I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I received 2 stents in my arteries, stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. With you by our side, together we'll keep fighting this battle. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. Put yourself on your to-do list. It could be the most important thing you ever do. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium My Pillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over. Your entire order ships absolutely free.
Welcome back. Next, we turn to a House hearing on election integrity. This comes as the aftermath of the 2020 election is still playing out in the Trump trials and beyond.
The focus of this House Committee on Administration hearing is preventing non-citizen voting and other foreign interference.
Let's watch.
Citizens in federal elections. Every illegitimate vote of a non-citizen negates the legitimate vote of a citizen. In 2000, only 537 votes in Florida determined the outcome of the presidential race. Floridians have changed our state's constitution. We have strengthened our laws. We have engaged in litigation, and we have an office dedicated to investigating election crimes. The only impediment to doing more is the federal government. That's why states need action from our congressional leaders so we can fulfill our constitutional duties under the law.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you very much. Our next witness, Hans von Spakovsky, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Protecting the ability of American citizens to participate in our democratic process is one of the most important duties of Congress. That requires ensuring that aliens, both those here legally and illegally, are not unlawfully registering and voting, spending money to support or oppose candidates in state referenda, or distorting and diluting representation of citizens by being included in apportionment and redistricting. We know that aliens are registering and actually voting, although we don't know the extent of the problem, since the vast majority of states are not verifying citizenship. But the indicators that it's occurring are there, and it's important to understand that every vote by an alien voids the vote of a citizen. To verify the accuracy of voter registration data, state election officials should be given complete and easy access to the SAVE system that Secretary Byrd mentioned, but also to the E-Verify system. Federal courts obtain their lists of potential jurors from state election officials. When someone is not a U.S. citizen, they are excused from jury duty, yet the federal courts are not forwarding that information back to secretaries of state so they can take appropriate action. Congress needs to amend the NVRA to clarify that the NVRA does not prohibit states from requiring applicants to provide proof they are U.S. citizens. Congress also, because of its constitutional authority over aliens, could make that a requirement for federal elections. The federal government requires individuals to provide such proof in order to be employed. And the right to work and earn a living is just as important as the right to vote. Barring states from requiring proof of citizenship makes no sense, particularly when the federal government requires that in order to be employed. The federal application for naturalization form asks whether an alien has, quote, ever registered to vote or voted in any federal, state, or local election in the United States. When an alien answers yes, DHS just sits on that information. Federal law needs to be changed to require DHS, when they get a yes answer, to forward that information to the state election official where that alien registered or voted, to the state attorney general, and to the U.S. Department of Justice so that state election officials can take that individual off the rolls and state and federal prosecutors can investigate and prosecute. Federal campaign finance law prohibits federal governments and aliens from participating in elections for candidates for office. But the definition of elections in the Federal Election Campaign Act does not include ballot referenda, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, and according to the FEC, it also does not include recall elections. That is a change that needs to be made in the law to keep foreign influence out of our elections. Reapportionment after the 2020 census gave additional seats to some states and reduced the number of seats held by 7. 6 states got more seats, 7 states had their representatives reduced. But that reapportionment was based on the total population of the U.S., which includes all aliens, whether they're here legally or illegally, even though they are not allowed to participate in our democratic political process. In addition to distorting representation in the House, it distorts our presidential election because, of course, reapportionment determines how many electoral votes someone has. How bad is the distortion? A 2015 report by the Congressional Research Service estimated that apportionment based on citizen population would give additional seats to 7 states and reduce the number of seats in 4 states. Given the unprecedented influx of aliens into this country in the last number of years, that distortion is obviously much worse today. We should provide both access and security in the election process for all eligible U.S. citizens. But allowing aliens to participate in the election process unfairly dilutes the votes of all citizens, regardless of their race or which political party they affiliate with. Congress and the states need to take steps to stop this from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Mr. Christian Adams is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelli, members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to testify. In this polarized atmosphere, it would be wonderful if we could agree on a few basic facts. Non-citizens are, in fact, getting onto American voter rolls, and some of them are voting. The data show that most often non-citizens are getting on the rolls through the motor voter process or third-party registration drives. Ignoring this problem ignores the harmful impacts to both our elections, but also to the aliens who are caught in the system breakdown. Because they have registered to vote, often at the behest of third parties or bureaucrats, these well-meaning green card holders face deportation. When a foreigner registers to vote in the motor voter system, as undeniably happened by the thousands in Pennsylvania, every American should be concerned. Once upon a time, fixing this problem would have been a bipartisan priority.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with YRefi, and they don't care about what happened with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com. YRefi, do well by doing good.
This is it, the culmination of everything our young athlete has worked for these past months. He's filled with determination. You can see it in his face. Is today the day he overcomes? And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's on fire. Nothing can stop him. Watch him as he heads towards the goal. Oh, he's rock hard. But that doesn't stop him. He's a warrior. He's back up. His eyes are on the goal. He's set up for the shot. He shoots. Goal!
Achieving goals like this is only possible with the monthly support of people just like you.
Please call the number on your screen right now and give your monthly support to Shriners Hospitals for Children so other children can reach their goals too.
If you give just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we will send you your very own Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of the love you're giving us. Because of monthly support of people like you, nothing is stopping me from achieving my goals.
And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's going left. Oh, he fakes right and continues. Look at those moves. He takes the shot. Goal! Good shot! Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to give right away. Your monthly gift helps kids achieve their goals. Goal!
I'm Iris Tao at the White House, and we are NTD.
Good to have you back. Now we continue our coverage on an election integrity hearing in the House. The hearing is titled American Confidence in Elections, Preventing Non-Citizen Voting and Other Foreign Interference.
The National Voter Registration Act makes it difficult for election officials to perform citizenship verification. This and other election issues will be in the spotlight today.
That's right, so let's continue that coverage right now.
Restoring trust in government by holding politicians and political groups accountable. Since our founding in 2020, APT has devoted extensive resources to uncovering, mapping, and publicizing outside money and influence in politics and policy. Americans should have every confidence that their elections are free from foreign interference and influence. But unfortunately, a significant source of foreign cash is flowing into politics from a Swiss billionaire named Hans-Jörg Wyss. Multiple press outlets have confirmed Mr. Wyss is a foreign national. But don't just take their word for it. Listen to what Mr. Wyss has said about the matter. In 2011, Mr. Wyss told a Swiss newspaper that he, quote, never felt the need to become an American, end quote. He claimed he found the process too, quote, complicated, end quote, and instead preferred to call himself, quote, a spiritual dual citizen, end quote. Despite Mr. Wyss's disinterest in becoming an American citizen, he made it a personal goal to influence American politics. According to a biography written by his own sister, Mr. Wyss's goal is to, quote, reinterpret the American Constitution in the light of progressive politics, end quote. So how is Mr. Wyss, who is not a U.S. citizen and therefore prohibited from directly and indirectly influencing our elections, doing just that? Well, first in the 90s and early aughts, he, seemingly illegally, gave more than $100,000 directly to candidates and committees. But Mr. Wyss's direct giving pales into comparison to his current and preferred method of influencing our politics, his nonprofits. Mr. Wyss uses his two nonprofits, the Wyss Foundation, a 501c3, and the Burger Action Fund, formerly called the Wyss Action Fund, a 501c4, to fund liberal groups across the nation. He has used these two nonprofits to pump almost $500 million into the U.S. political system. In his biography, Mr. Wyss's sister explicitly detailed his ability to, quote, exert an influence on American domestic politics through his foundations, end quote. If this sounds like a staggering amount of money from a reclusive foreign billionaire and organizations that are far from being household names, that's because it's all by design. Again, while speaking to foreign media, Mr. Wyss admitted that he was fighting laws in Arizona that, quote, give police too many rights, end quote, working to nominate progressive federal judges and funding abortion clinics. But the catch? He also bragged that his, quote, name never appears, end quote, linked to his efforts. In fact, the Associated Press described Burger Action Fund as, quote, a nondescript name for a group with a rather specific purpose, steering the wealth of Hans-Jörg Wyss, a Swiss billionaire, into the world of American politics and policy. So how exactly, in his own words, does he exert an influence? According to the New York Times, Mr. Wyss's, quote, political activism is channeled through a daisy chain of opaque organizations that mask the ultimate recipients of his money. The most opaque of those organizations is a little-known group called the 1630 Fund, which, according to Bloomberg, serves as, quote, a clearinghouse for the left, end quote, and has also received $243 million from Mr. Wyss. 1630 Fund bankrolls efforts to elevate President Biden's agenda, funds Supreme Court nomination fights, invests in massive voter turnout operations, engages in issue advocacy campaigns against vulnerable Republican senators and representatives, and has funneled nearly $100 million and counting into state ballot issues across 25 states. That's right, the same group that has received around $250 million from a foreign national turns around and spends it on GOTV, voter registration, super PACs, and ballot issues. These foreign influence loopholes must be closed. Foreign nationals are already barred from donating to candidates directly, so why should all these vehicles that influence our elections be any different? American elections should be for American citizens. Stopping foreign nationals, whether they be a reclusive Swiss billionaire or a communist dictator, from funding U.S. policy fights is a simple step to take. In his 1796 farewell address, George Washington cautioned that, quote, "Foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of Republican government," end quote. Over 200 years later, that sentiment remains true. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlewoman yields back. Mr. Michael Waldman is recognized for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Morelli, members of the committee, Americans are concerned about the health of our democracy, and rightly so. Ever since our nation was founded in the Declaration of Independence, on the idea that government is legitimate only when it rests on the consent of the governed, we have struggled over decades and centuries to live up to that ideal, to make sure that our ability to have self-government extends to all eligible Americans. All of us, whatever our views, should care and fight for elections that are free and fair and secure. So in the sweep of American history, the rise of the election denier movement is extremely disturbing. Never before has there been an organized political force determined and devoted to undermining public trust in our system and in our elections in this manner. Now, in 2020, we heard wild stories of voting machines flipping votes, of boxes of ballots, of ballot paper that supposedly had bamboo fibers in it to prove it came from China. This year, we're hearing the beginning of wild stories about widespread, huge numbers of non-citizens voting in federal elections. So let's be clear, this is an urban myth. It is a conspiracy theory. It is not true. Why is it happening now? It's being pushed preemptively, I believe, to set the stage for undermining the legitimacy of the 2024 election. This year, the big lie is being pre-deployed. And it is the basis for the SAVE Act and what we believe is an unnecessary and misguided piece of legislation. As we have heard, it is illegal today for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. Very illegal. States have a multiplicity of procedures in place to detect and prevent it. And as a result, non-citizen voting in federal elections is vanishingly rare. Now, this legislation would essentially require citizens, eligible voters, to produce a birth certificate or a passport or naturalization papers in some instances to vote. These are documents that many millions of Americans do not have. Eligible voters, citizens do not have. Now, Speaker Mike Johnson, as we've heard, said recently on the Capitol steps that we all know that intuitively this all must be happening. As he said, quote, "but it has not been something that is easily provable." In fact, it is easily disprovable. Any individual who illegally registers or votes in a federal election leaves a paper trail. They are handing the evidence of their crime over to the government. These records are publicly available to all for scrutiny, and as I say, governments have ample opportunity to find, detect, and prevent this kind of action. There are real problems in our electoral system, challenges to our elections. Disinformation and deepfakes driven by AI, racially motivated voter suppression, a broken campaign finance system, gerrymandering by both political parties. Congress should act to address these and other real challenges. So we urge the Congress to enact the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Together, they would modernize our elections, set national standards, address gerrymandering and dark money and funds from outside the country, and restore the full strength of the nation's most effective civil rights law. And at the very least, we urge Congress to act on a bipartisan basis, as it has before, to provide funds for election officials to do the very work of securing election integrity and securing accurate lists, voter rolls, and running these elections in upcoming appropriations, as has been the case in previous years. We can do this. We can bolster election integrity while ensuring free and fair elections. We can do this if we rely on facts, not fear, facts, not, quote, intuition. Congress has done this before. It should do it again, and we urge you to reject measures that would undermine faith in our system and disenfranchise many eligible voters, and instead come together for reforms that would improve our system and continue our march toward that system envisioned by the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I'll begin our questions today, followed by the ranking member. We'll then alternate between parties. I recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking our witnesses questions. Mr. Christian Adams, I want to start with you. Federal law makes it a felony for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. Is that correct?
It is.
And federal law also makes it a felony to submit a voter form with false info like citizenship, correct?
Correct.
But under the NVRA, National Voter Registration Act, states are required to provide voter registration materials at various state offices, including those providing public assistance, right?
Yes, it has one, but it's limited the burden on the states. But
okay, so how does the NVRA deal with the situation when non-citizens?
That was a hearing in the House on election integrity. But we're heading to a quick break now. Before, though, one quick note. If you're looking for around-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
Stay with us, and we'll bring you more news in the next 2 hours.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history. Inspired by the divine. Experience Shin-Yun.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I'm so proud to call you my son.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
Audio recordings are at the center of a political battle. Republicans want them, but President Biden has asserted executive privilege over them. More on what the fuss is over.
The cross-examination of star witness Michael Cohen resumes in former President Trump's so-called hush money trial. Hear Trump's address to reporters as he enters the courtroom.
China's Xi Jinping rolling out red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin as the two pledge an even closer relationship.
U.S. officials are concerned about China building its influence through development programs in other nations. What kind of threat does it pose to the U.S., and what can the U.S. do to counter it?
Netflix is teaming up with the NFL for live Christmas Day games. NTD's Don Ma has more on a 3-year deal signed this week.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, Evelyn Lee today in for Stephania Cox. Our top news, former Trump fixer Michael Cohen is back on the witness stand today for more cross-examination. The defense has tried to cast him as untruthful and biased against former President Trump.
Now, it's worth noting there will be no trial tomorrow as Trump will attend his son Barron's high school graduation.
That's right, and here's Trump at the courthouse earlier this morning.
Every single review, every legal scholar that I've been able to read said there's no case, there's no crime, it's a disgrace that it was allowed to happen. The judge, as you know, is highly conflicted, like nobody I've ever seen is conflicted. He should not be the judge, he should not be allowed to have anything to do with this case. He should be so far away from this case. Outside, if you take a look, it looks like we're Fort Knox. There's so many police and they don't allow people to come. You know, you're allowed to have friendly protests, but we're not allowed to have anything here.
The prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, is back on the witness stand today for more cross-examination by Trump's legal team.
Defense attorneys are expected to focus on how Cohen previously pleaded guilty to tax fraud charges and how he lied in court in the process.
One of Trump's lawyers began by bringing up Jeremy Rosenberg, a now retired detective with the DA's office, who was close to Cohen.
Today, more of Trump's allies are in court to support him, including Congress members Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and Bob Good. Trump Organization executive Alan Garten is also in court, but no longer considered a witness. Trump is also appealing a verdict in E. Jean Carroll's defamation case against him. He wants to overturn the $83 million judgment.
Carroll sued Trump for defamation over statements he made denying her allegations of sexual assault. An attorney for Trump wrote yesterday that Trump is appealing all orders and rulings that led to the final judgment last month.
Trump said the verdict was, quote, absolutely ridiculous and politically motivated. Carroll's lawyers did not immediately comment on Trump's appeal. Switching gears to President Biden, he's asserting executive privilege over interview recordings with special counsel Robert Hur. The move comes as House Republicans are taking their first steps in the contempt of Congress proceedings against Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Republicans want the Justice Department to turn over the recordings as part of their impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The interviews focused on classified documents.
The Justice Department has made some of the subpoenaed materials available to House Republicans. That includes transcripts of the special counsel's interviews with Biden, but it has doubled down on its decision to not release the audio files of the interviews. Anti-Israel protesters occupied the University of California, Irvine's library and set up a protest camp yesterday. Police arrived on campus grounds as students were holding Palestinian flags and signs.
Some signs calling for the university to divest from its relationships with Israel. Police later clashed with the protesters who occupied a building. About 200 to 300 protesters surrounded a UC Irvine lecture hall at a time when no classes were in session. Police detained at least a dozen demonstrators as they cleared the encampment.
And California State University has placed Sonoma State Campus President Mike Lee on leave. The move followed his decision to give in to the demands of protesters and consider divesting from Israel.
Lee announced concessions to an anti-Israel encampment without proper approval. Lee also proposed an academic boycott of Israel and collaboration with activist groups for decision-making. And a new report links the Chinese Communist Party to the anti-Israel protests that have been taking place in the U.S. since after the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the findings published by the Network Contagion Research Institute.
The report analyzes the activities and foreign relationships of the Shut It Down for Palestine movement since its formation in October 2023. It describes the group as an anti-capitalist, anti-police, and anti-government protest movement. The report says Shut It Down for Palestine functions as a network for organizing frequent demonstrations and using direct action campaigns to target critical infrastructure and public spaces. The report says members of the Singham network operate under the Shut It Down for Palestine umbrella. The Singham network is a global web of nonprofits, financial sponsors, and alternative news sources connected to Neville Roy Singham. The New York Times wrote in April 2023 that the socialist Singham, quote, works closely with the Chinese government media machine and is financing its propaganda worldwide. The Jerusalem Post wrote that Singham worked as a consultant for Huawei, lives in Shanghai, and shared office premises with a Chinese propaganda firm. He has also reportedly been spotted at CCP workshops and has been investigated by the US, Canada, and India for CCP operations. According to the New York Times, Singham denies working for any political party or government and says he is guided only by his own beliefs and long-held personal views. The report says the Singham network exploits regulatory loopholes in the U.S. nonprofit system to move giant sums of money to organizations and movements that actively stoke social unrest at the grassroots level. According to the report, Shut It Down for Palestine has ties to extremist groups that embrace a violent single-state resolution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The report says the recent protests seem focused on Israel, but they are part of a well-funded initiative driving a revolutionary anti-government and anti-capitalist agenda. Senator Mark Rubio told Fox News Digital that he warned the Biden administration of the ties between the Chinese Communist Party and certain far-left organizations operating in the U.S. The report calls for more accountability from nonprofits to ensure that they are not exploiting their position to support terrorist activities or enhance the agendas of foreign powers that are hostile to the United States. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
NTD reached out to Shut It Down for Palestine for a comment on their alleged ties to extremist groups, but we did not hear back from them yet. Now, from state-backed hacking to stealing advanced U.S. technologies, a House hearing explores the increasing cyber threats posed by Communist China. Here are the details.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my observations.
The House Oversight Committee on Wednesday sat down with Intel experts to discuss solutions to Beijing's cyber warfare. The hearing comes as U.S. and U.K. officials are sounding the alarm over rising cyber threats from Communist China.
In fact, if you took every single one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts and focused them exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1.
From unfair trade practices to advanced technologies to transnational repression, the Chinese Communist Party is reaching its hands into every sphere of U.S. society.
sophisticated surveillance balloons across our sovereign land, technical surveillance stations just 90 miles away in Cuba, maritime port threats, Huawei, strategic land purchases near military installations, fentanyl. I'm not even addressing space, deepfakes, or 5G or genomics.
Earlier this year, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned of a Chinese state-backed hacking campaign named Volt Typhoon. The group reportedly targeted critical U.S. infrastructures including oil pipelines, water treatment plants, and telecommunications. Testifying before the House Select Committee on the CCP, Wray said the goal of the operation was to, quote, wreak havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of its choosing.
It's estimated that 80% of American adults have had all of their data stolen by the Communist Party of China. The other 20%, just most of their data. Adding the CCP's crippling stranglehold onto so many critical aspects of our supply chain, and what results is domestic vulnerability we have not seen in generations, if ever.
Last September, Chinese state-backed hackers reportedly breached multiple U.S. government agencies and stole roughly 60,000 emails from State Department officials. It took place just before Secretary of State Antony Blinken's China visit.
The attackers accessed the inboxes of the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the U.S. Ambassador to China, Congressman Don Bacon, and key State Department employees.
Experts said the federal government needs to incentivize updates in the cybersecurity space. They said in doing so, it would encourage the private sector to do the same. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And up next, to level the playing field with Beijing, the Biden administration is imposing tariffs on certain kinds of solar panels imported from China. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50-enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. A few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did.
Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor today, and your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
Thanks for staying with us. Russia and China continue to strengthen their so-called no-limit partnership. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping.
Putin and Xi in Beijing today pledged to deepen their strategic partnership as Russian troops advance in Ukraine.
And Beijing continues to supply Moscow with high-tech components for weapon production to bypass Western sanctions. It also buys the bulk of sanctioned Russian oil.
Russia-China military ties have also tightened. Joint war games have been held involving troops, naval drills, and long-range bomber patrols. Putin says he will discuss the war in Ukraine with Xi later today.
This is Putin and Xi's fourth face-to-face meeting since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Xi declared what he called a no-limits partnership with Putin, just weeks before the war started over 2 years ago. The Chinese regime's authoritarian model crushes political opposition, human rights, and freedom of speech.
Retired Colonel Grant Newsham told NTD the wars in Ukraine and Gaza distract the U.S. from any serious attention to China. Here's Newsham on the Xi-Putin relationship.
The more the fighting goes on in Ukraine, the more the Americans have to focus on that, and things are getting pretty dicey there. You're emptying out American arsenals. The same thing goes with Gaza. It's a huge political issue in the United States. It's caused chaos in parts of the U.S., certainly on some college campuses. It has handcuffed U.S. political movement. The administration clearly is trying to thread a needle unsuccessfully and play both sides of this.
An American soldier held in Russia has reportedly pleaded guilty to theft charges. He's now cooperating with investigators. Russian state news RIA reported on the update today, citing a representative of the local interior ministry.
Gordon Black is a U.S. staff sergeant. He was detained in the far eastern city of Vladivostok on May 2nd. He's suspected of stealing from a woman he was in a relationship with. The court ordered he remain detained until July.
The federal government has warned U.S. citizens against all travel to Russia. That's due to the potential for harassment and the arbitrary enforcement of the law against Americans.
A handful of U.S. citizens have been detained since Russia invaded Ukraine, including Evan Gershkovich, a Wall Street Journal reporter who was detained in 2023 on charges of spying. The White House announced new moves today to protect domestic solar factories from Chinese competition.
First, scrapping a tariff exemption for double-sided panels. The panels only accounted for a small part of the market 2 years ago, but now these parts have become essential for many solar projects.
Biden will also end a waiver on tariffs for solar panels made by Chinese companies in Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. The White House also plans to make it easier to claim a subsidy for projects that use at least 40% American-made products.
According to S&P Global, solar panel imports have surged by over 80% in the past 2 years, with most of the goods from Chinese companies.
President Biden's new moves could help him in the November election on multiple fronts, including economy, climate measures, and deterring China to protect the U.S.
And Taiwan's president-elect, William Lai, will be sworn into office next Monday. The White House is sending an unofficial delegation to the island this weekend to celebrate the inauguration. Orville Schell, the director of the Center on U.S.-China Relations at Asia Society, said Washington is walking on a delicate tightrope between deterring China and supporting Taiwan.
Well, I think if you go to Taiwan or Asia, I think everybody is painfully aware that when a big power that's filled with grievance like Russia or China starts talking about invading another territory because they view it as theirs, it's very dangerous. Does that mean Xi Jinping is about to invade Taiwan? I don't think so. But it does mean that we have to be very careful in terms of our strategy to do everything possible to deter that impulse, because it is.
The Biden administration announced yesterday that 2 former senior U.S. officials and a scholar will be headed to Taiwan. It added that the move will certainly upset China, but it's unlikely to draw an excessive response.
The trip comes as the U.S. and China try to stabilize relations. Washington has made it clear that it doesn't support Taiwan independence, but will deter Beijing's aggression toward Taiwan under the U.S. law.
Beijing sees Taiwan as part of China and a core interest, although the Chinese regime has never ruled the island. William Lai, the next Taiwanese president, is known for his tough on China policies. After the break, Microsoft is asking some of its China-based staff to consider transferring outside the country amid China-U.S. tensions. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
And China is building its influence through development programs, putting other nations in debt. What kind of threat does it pose to the U.S.? And what can the U.S. do to counter it? We'll tune into a hearing when we return.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over, your entire order ships absolutely free.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below, support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
Welcome back, everyone. Joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the tech and business world.
Yep.
Don Ma, good to see you. What do you have for us today?
Chris, good to see you as well. And Evelyn, in for Steph, breath of fresh air here. Just kidding. But okay, starting with Microsoft, it is asking some of its China-based staff to consider transferring outside of the country. And this is according to the company today. So this comes as U.S.-China relations are strained amid a race for cutting-edge technology here. Washington, just some background here, has been trying to limit Beijing's access to advanced chips used in AI applications. There are concerns that the technology can be used to strengthen China's military. So Microsoft here is asking about 700 to 800 people who are involved in machine learning and other cloud computing related work to consider relocating. And this is according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, the employees here, mostly engineers of Chinese nationality, they were recently offered an option to transfer to the US, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand. But NTD could not independently verify those details. Microsoft, by the way, is among major US companies that have the largest presence in China, entered the market there in 1992 and operates a large research and development center in the country.
That is absolutely, fascinating. And no matter what the reason is, it sounds like they might be able to reduce quite a bit of business risk, especially what we know from news that came from a couple months before. And there's reports that more Chinese have been wanting to leave the country, especially since COVID. So I guess that's their chance now. Let's move on, though, because I know you brought some news about Netflix.
Yeah, seems to be big news right now recently. So for football fans here, the streaming service announced yesterday a 3-year partnership with the NFL to broadcast Christmas Day games live. So this year, Netflix will air 2 holiday games on December 25th. And then in 2025 and 26, it's going to stream at least 1 game. And the financial terms of the deal were not disclosed. The NFL already partners with most streaming platforms, including Thursday night games on Amazon and Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. So it looks like Netflix scored a touchdown here.
Nice.
Yeah, and it seems like they need it because you have Disney and Warner partnering to bundle up some of their services and really challenge Netflix.
Yeah, a lot of that happening recently, where you have these bundle deals, and that is cheaper than individually subscribing to a lot of these services. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of that happening.
Got to keep up somehow.
All right, Don Ma, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, the Chinese Communist Party is expanding its global influence by helping other nations develop and often leading them into debt.
House lawmakers right now are examining this strategy and how the U.S. can counter it.
Let's tune in now to the House Subcommittee on Competition with China and the hearing titled All Roads Leading to Beijing.
Between nations. The Chinese Communist Party does not think like us. When it invests abroad, it does so in the name of control. It exports authoritarianism and exploits people and natural resources in service of its own mercantilist interests. The CCP's Belt and Road Initiative, the subject of today's hearing, is officially a program where Beijing invests in critical resources, transportation, and digital infrastructure in lower and middle-income countries. In reality, BRI has only one purpose: to expand the CCP's influence and control around the world. The CCP uses investment dollars to entramp unassuming countries in debt, gain territorial control and influence, expand the reach of its surveillance state, and dominate critical supply chains. For the CCP, development finance is a weapon to undercut U.S. influence, challenge U.S. interests, and bring countries around the world under its authoritarian thumb. Any suggestion that the BRI is about altruistic investment is a lie. The Chinese Communist Party is not interested in building infrastructure to be a friendly neighbor or even to make a profit. It wants strategic control, and it wants it at the expense of the United States and liberal values. Through the BRI, heavily subsidized Chinese companies purchase and develop mines to secure Beijing's control of critical global supply chains. Chinese firms get cheap credit to construct strategically located ports, giving Beijing the power to restrict U.S. access, collect valuable intelligence, and exploit the ports for economic and security gains. The CCP builds telecommunications networks with built-in surveillance and cybersecurity risks to advance its ultimate goal of technology-enabled authoritarianism. And the list goes on. Economic viability does not matter. Beijing readily loses billions building shoddy infrastructure and constructing CCP-controlled 5G networks at less than half the price of Western alternatives, all for the promise of influence. U.S. alternatives cannot compete on those terms. The CCP's campaign of control entraps developing countries. Poor infrastructure construction leads to dangerous safety conditions on roads and in mines. Chinese workers are imported to displace local workers. And the CCP makes no pretense of respecting the environment, squandering the natural resources of the host country. Corruption increases, human rights are ignored, institutions are weakened, and democratic backsliding is almost guaranteed. We need to confront the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative head-on. Nations are desperate for an alternative to the CCP's poorly built roads, corrupt digital infrastructure, and crooked loans. However, if the CCP shows up, it's hard to turn it away. The United States needs to step up and take action. That means reforming our development arsenal and finding creative ways to collaborate with like-minded allies. This includes enhancing the ability of the Development Finance Corporation to work with a larger variety of partners around the world. There is also an urgent need to reform and revitalize the Export-Import Bank as an arm of American strategic investment. I look forward to hearing David Trujillo's recommendation on how to do just that. We also need to provide support to governments most at risk from CCP influence and to reinforce international institutions against Beijing's grip. Dan Runde has been an outspoken on our role our aid agencies played in all but eliminating the AIDS pandemic from Africa and expanding Internet access. And I look forward to hearing his ideas on how we can build on this record of success. I also look forward to hearing from Dr. Brad Parks about ways that we can utilize aid to support our interests and prevent partners in the developing world from signing up for more than they bargained for. We have a lot to cover today, so now I yield to Ranking Member Krishnamurthy for his opening statement.
Congrats, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, and thank you to the witnesses and the audience for your attention to this very important topic. In 2013, Xi Jinping launched the Belt and Road Initiative, also known as BRI. Xi's vision was to connect the PRC, the People's Republic of China, to the rest of the world through infrastructure. As you can see here on this visual, 11 years later, believe it or not, over 75% of the countries of the world have signed up for this initiative, which has involved over $1 trillion in Chinese investment and loans. But the BRI is more than economics. Xi Jinping calls it a, quote, solution for China to build a community of common human destiny, an ominous-sounding euphemism for a world order led by the CCP. To him, that means political influence, military installations, and more. I'll make 4 points here. First, the BRI fits squarely within the CCP's military ambitions. As we'll see, many BRI projects, especially deep water ports, are tailored for military use. China's military, the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, is deeply invested in the BRI and talks about using ports and other projects as part of its, quote, going global strategy. And we know that by PRC law, any civilian asset around the world must be made available to the PLA at its demand. Second, BRI projects are not known for their high quality, and that's an understatement. Take the Coca-Codo Sinclair Dam in Ecuador, for example. Despite costing almost $3 billion, the dam's reservoir is clogged with silt and has over 17,000 cracks, forcing the dam to operate below capacity or risk failure. The dam project has also contributed to massive landslides, which took out this road right here and had an oil spill that's harmed over 150,000 people in the area, many of whom are indigenous. Third, the BRI is plagued with corruption and bribery. In the case of this dam in Ecuador, for instance, China bribed almost every single official involved with the project, including then-President Lenin Moreno. Here's a picture of him with former Premier Lee. Over 10 years, Moreno and other officials allegedly received almost $80 million in bribes over a decade, $80 million. And fourth, these projects bring massive debt. China is the world's single largest official creditor, having lent up to $1.5 trillion. A whopping 80% of Chinese government loans have gone to countries in debt distress. It's no wonder that people consider China to be the ultimate predator-creditor. Zambia is a case in point. It owes China an estimated $6 billion, equivalent to Zambia's government expenditures for an entire year. One study found that while China's projects boosted Zambian GDP, they raised foreign interest payments so high that the government had to cut healthcare, social services, and other domestic programs. Now, with all these problems, the question becomes how we in the United States must respond. I say we need our own BRI, but it stands for Bring Real Improvement. First, it starts with recognizing that these countries around the world will need economic development. They will get their deep water ports. They will get their infrastructure projects. The question is from whom? Will it be China or will it be the United States and our partners? I say it should be us. Bring real improvement. Second, our BRI means our projects must be transparent, high quality, and not burdensome for our taxpayers. We can do this. We can do this through modest reforms, through institutions like the Development Finance Corporation, known as the DFC, and we can make offerings that actually compete attractively in comparison to the Chinese BRI projects. Bring real improvement. This is what bringing real improvement really looks like. On the left is this visual. Women in Tech, it's a Women in Tech event hosted by Africell, an African telecoms company that the DFC supported. This DFC project replaced Huawei infrastructure and trained locals, bringing local jobs and boosting the economy sustainably. This is what bringing real improvement looks like. The picture on the right, that's Chinese. It's a Chinese oil agreement recently signed with Angola, male only, in a boardroom choreographed and controlled. We can do better than that. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy. If any other member wishes to submit a statement for the record, without objection, those statements will be added to the record. Today, we are privileged to be joined by a great panel of witnesses who have been on the front lines with U.S. global investment and competition. Our first witness is Mr. David Trulio. Mr. Trulio is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Mr. Trulio brings a distinguished career of government service and expertise in strategic competition, having most recently served at the Export-Import Bank as counselor to the chairman and as Senior Vice President on China and transformational exports. Our second witness is Mr. Dan Runde, currently a Senior Vice President at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Runde previously served at the U.S. Agency for International Development and the World Bank Group, and he helped create the International Development Finance Corporation through the BUILD Act, which we will discuss that today. Finally, we are joined by Dr. Brad Parks. Dr. Parks is the Executive Director of the Aid Data Research Lab at the College of William & Mary, Like Mr. Trillo and Mr. Rundy, Dr. Parks has also served in government, helping to stand up the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Thank you for being here, gentlemen, and with that, I'd like to welcome all the witnesses, and thank you all for being here this morning. Mr. Trillo, you are now recognized for your opening remarks.
Chairman Molinar, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for your very important work and opportunity to testify today for all of us here on this panel. I'm pleased to discuss with you my views on how to address the CCP's global development and economic offensive. Of note, these are my own views and not necessarily the views of my current or previous employers. So simply put,
My baby's back from the West Coast. Here are those pictures that you asked for your school project? First day of school, cute as a button.
So long ago.
Oh, here's Grandma Florence after that flood wiped out the whole neighborhood. Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here. I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe. And it's the best way to protect that legacy.
Those beans smell heavenly.
Give Mom a little credit.
You know what? We should make an emergency communication plan. That way we're ready this year.
Great idea.
At my dorm, we have emergency kits for earthquakes and wildfires, but I'm sure there's something more local I can send you with the link.
Okay.
Smart.
I'm coming to share with you guys.
Protect your legacy. Plan for natural disasters today. Visit ready.gov/plan.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic. So I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
You need some help?
Your tow chains are a little loose. Could spark a wildfire. I could show you how to secure them properly if you'd like.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. You should check out SmokeyBear.com. They've got a bunch of tips on wildfire prevention.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Want to know what's really happening around the world? Join us for a deep dive discussion with our expert panel on International Reporters Roundtable.
Welcome back. Let's return to a House subcommittee hearing on the Chinese Communist Party's ongoing global influence campaign.
U.S. officials are concerned about Chinese development programs in other nations and the debt to China that racks up around the world.
So let's go back to that hearing now.
Articles and defense services. That prohibition is outdated and makes no sense. Second, for competition in sectors key to America's long-term security and prosperity, replace EXIM's current U.S. content policies with an approach based on export value and job creation. Third, raise EXIM's 2% statutory default limit to 4%. And if the revised default rate is exceeded, allow 1 year to cure the default rate before it limits the operations of the bank. Fourth, update Ex-Im's underwriting standard from reasonable assurance of repayment to reasonable likelihood of repayment in order to enable Ex-Im to more effectively support U.S. companies competing against the PRC. Fifth, and finally, put into law through Ex-Im's charter the Make More in America initiative, an existing Ex-Im policy, but it's not in law yet. And that makes available the agency's existing medium and long-term loans, guarantees, and insurance available, which is very important. So in conclusion, this is a time of great consequence for our country and the world. Addressing these hard but pressing issues described above will contribute materially to our success. I commend the bipartisan work of the committee and look forward to being a resource to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rundy, you may proceed.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Molinar, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy, members of the committee, thank you very much. My main message is this: in this era of great power competition, the United States needs an alternative solution rather than demand that developing countries cease working with the CCP. We can't fight something with nothing. So what's our something? That's the question. There's some hard truths we have to face. The CCP is the go-to financier and builder of infrastructure in the developing world. We don't have to meet China dollar for dollar, but we must be a better infrastructure investment partner. At the end of the day, infrastructure bends towards trading routes. If your #1 trading partner is China, then China-oriented infrastructure is going to follow. Ideally, we would lead the world on trade as we did 25 years ago. Unfortunately, BRI is an ambitious and hopeful project that speaks to the aspirations of China's friends and potential friends. I hate it because it's a great idea, because it inspires folks in the global south. It's just not our idea. And it comes at a good time for them, because over the next 15 years, more infrastructure is projected to be built globally than currently exists. The United States has attempted to respond to this challenge in a number of ways. Congress reauthorized the Ex-Im Bank. That was great. Congress passed the BUILD Act, which established the DFC. Excellent. President Biden stood up something called a PGII, the Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment. It's a work in progress. There have been attempts since 2019 to try and standardize quality infrastructure. There's something called the Blue Dot Network. It's also a work in progress. We haven't done enough. We've got to do a lot more, and that's why I think this hearing is so helpful and important. I have 7 recommendations. First, let's get America's soft power in order. The BUILD Act, AGOA, which is a Trade Preferences Act for Africa, and the Ex-Im Bank are all going to be in front of the Congress for reauthorization in the next 2 years. I'd recommend we reauthorize them maybe with some tweaks. Okay, there's the Bipartisan Americas Act, which has been proposed as a new partnership for our neighbors in the Americas. That's in front of the Congress. There's a proposal in front of the Congress to finance a capital increase for the private sector arm of the Inter-American Development Bank. These are all actionable things that this Congress or our Congress could take in the next 2 years. Second, we're going to need a little bit more foreign aid to counter China. It's going to be on eye-glazingly boring stuff, but really important stuff. We need to find probably about $2 billion a year to do this to counter China. Third, we're going to have to strengthen development agencies. The DFC, which has been talked about, should be able to operate in places like Panama more easily. It should be able to operate more easily in places like Mexico more easily. So it needs to operate in middle and upper middle income countries. Congress will have an opportunity to change and raise the credit card limit on the DFC at its next reauthorization. The Millennium Challenge Corporation, started in the Bush administration, could be repurposed as an infrastructure response to the Belt and Road. It's never been fully funded, and it's something to look at. We should also look at the example of Power Africa. This was an initiative of the Obama administration that has endured across administrations, where AID is in the lead and different agencies have roles and responsibilities, and it's about providing financing and energy to Africa. And that's a good template. Okay. Fourth, we need to ride herd on the World Bank and the regional development banks. By that I mean we've got to have active leadership. And that as a result, it can be a force multiplier for American and Western forms of globalization. We should kick China out of having developing country status. It's totally bonkers that China gets to borrow money from the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. Fifth, we're going to need to create some new vehicles sponsored by the U.S. government. I'd love to see us create an enterprise fund for undersea cables. I'd also like us to look at securitizing infrastructure projects in the developing world. The International Finance Corporation, as part of the World Bank, is looking at this. If we could crowd in Western institutional investors the way we do in the housing market in the United States, that would be a game changer for global infrastructure and a way to crowd in American private capital. 7, we got to do a bunch of boring stuff. We're going to have to train about 100,000 bureaucrats in the developing world to buy and manage infrastructure a heck of a lot better. This is eye-glazingly boring stuff. It's really important. Finally, we need to establish private sector consortia. We need to work with our allies and friends, and we need to bring together companies of allied nations that could work together to deliver projects that are just as turnkey ready as the way Belt and Road does it. They can bring money and they can move more quickly and they bring a whole bunch of stuff in one package. We need to work together to do that. That requires 3 things. We got to have better business intelligence. We got to be better in commercial diplomacy, and we got to be more coordinated and work better with our friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Parks, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairman Molinar, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy, and members of the committee. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak with you. If you were sitting in Beijing right now and you were looking at a dashboard of China's overseas project portfolio, you would see a lot of flashing red lights. The Chinese authorities are dealing with 3 big problems at the same time. The first is debt repayment. Beijing went on a lending spree. It issued thousands of loans worth more than $1 trillion for big-ticket infrastructure projects spread across 125 countries. Now, its borrowers are having difficulty repaying their debts. 80% of China's overseas lending portfolio is currently supporting countries in financial distress. The second problem is that a lot of Beijing's overseas infrastructure projects are risky from an environmental, social, or governance perspective. When China first got into the global infrastructure market, it had only 17 problem projects, and they were worth less than $450 million. Today, it has nearly 1,700 problem projects worth more than $450 billion with a B. The third problem is reputational risk. As Belt and Road projects have run into trouble, Beijing has seen its public approval rating in the developing world plunge from 56% to 40%. Media sentiment has also soured. And with the grace periods on many Chinese loans expiring, Beijing now finds itself in an uncomfortable position as the developing world's largest official debt collector. It's navigating this transition at a time when many of its biggest borrowers are either illiquid or insolvent. But here's the thing. Beijing is not going to stand by and watch its flagship global infrastructure initiative crash and burn. The Chinese authorities have already launched a far-reaching effort to de-risk the Belt and Road Initiative. They call it BRI 2.0. In the short run, Beijing is scanning its global portfolio and firefighting in response to crises. It's refocusing its time and money on distressed borrowers, troubled projects, and sources of public backlash. But Beijing is also playing the long game. It's putting in place new safeguards to future-proof the BRI. China's making course corrections that address 3 different types of risk in its portfolio: repayment risk, project performance risk, and reputational risk. Beijing is taking several short-term measures to manage the risk of not being repaid. First, it's paying itself by sweeping dollars and euros out of the cash collateral accounts of borrowers. Then, if borrowers ask for some type of debt relief, like a temporary suspension of repayments, Beijing is requiring that they first replenish the accounts that they have depleted. Beijing is also ramping up emergency rescue lending to ensure that its biggest borrowers have enough cash on hand to service their outstanding project debts. So that's one part of the de-risking effort. But Beijing is also making long-term changes to its loan portfolio to reduce the risk of not being repaid in the future. Rather than relying on its own banks, Beijing is increasingly outsourcing risk management to lending institutions with stronger due diligence standards. It's dialing down its use of bilateral lending instruments, and it's dialing up the provision of credit through collaborative lending arrangements with Western commercial banks and multilateral institutions. With respect to project performance risk, Beijing is focused on addressing a common criticism of the BRI, that it privileges speed over safety. China's adopting increasingly robust ESG safeguards, but it's doing so in a way that preserves a long-standing source of competitive advantage, its reputation for implementing projects with lightning speed. Finally, with respect to reputational risk, China has recently experienced more losses than gains vis-a-vis Washington on 3 measures of soft power: public opinion, elite support, and the favorability of media coverage. But the Chinese authorities are not resting on their laurels. They're changing the way they allocate aid and credit. Beijing now channels most of its money to highly competitive jurisdictions. About 2/3 of Chinese aid and credit goes to toss-up countries. These are places where neither China nor the U.S. has an insurmountable lead over its rival. China's also doubling down in competitive jurisdictions once they start to lean towards Beijing and away from Washington. The bottom line is that Beijing is several steps ahead of its competitors. The U.S. and its G7 allies have underestimated the ambition of China's effort to overhaul Belt and Road. They are focused on competing with a version of the BRI that no longer exists, BRI 1.0, rather than.
Before we head to break, if you have any feedback, please email us at news.today@ntd.com.
That's right. Stay with us. We'll have more stories in just a moment.
Ancient Scandinavians, often referred to as the Vikings, might not have been so simple and barbaric as they've been portrayed for the last decades. In order to understand the Vikings on a deeper level, we need to take a closer look at their original belief system, their earliest ethical principles and worldview, which are revealed in the myths, stories, and prophecies of their times. In many of the Viking stories, we learn about the dangers of corruption of the human soul. And all this ties into how and why the world and humankind eventually degenerates, leading up to the end times and the last battle between good and evil. In this episode, we're going to take a look into the inner world of the ancient Scandinavians and get acquainted with 2 of their most central tales that reveal their guiding principles for humankind, both for themselves as well as for mankind in modern times.
The glory of piano masterpieces from the Baroque, Classical, and Romantic periods. New Tang Dynasty Television invites you to join the 2024 NTD International Piano Competition. Together, we preserve and revitalize the art of authentic classical piano music. October 14th to the 19th at the Kaufman Music Center in New York City. Apply now at piano.ntdtv.com.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just
just 2 teaspoons of it and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
The cross-examination of star witness Michael Cohen resumes in former President Trump's so-called hush money trial. Hear Trump's address to reporters as he enters the courtroom.
House Republicans are pushing a bill that would force President Biden to ship weapons to Israel. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez reports from Capitol Hill.
Biden is reportedly holding a fundraiser in Los Angeles in June. With some big names, we break down the president's campaign finances.
China's Xi Jinping rolled out red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin as the two pledge an even closer relationship.
The Prime Minister of Slovakia is in stable but serious condition after an assassination attempt. A senior citizen fired multiple shots.
And there's a special treat in store for this year's champion of the Westminster Kennel Club dog show. See the miniature poodle enjoy a steak lunch at a New York restaurant.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Welcome, I'm Evelyn Lee in for Stephania Cox. Today, our top news, former Trump fixer Michael Cohen is back on the witness stand today for more cross-examination. The defense has tried to cast him as untruthful and biased against former President Trump.
It's worth noting that there will be no trial tomorrow as Trump will attend his son Barron's high school graduation.
That's right, and here's Trump at the courthouse earlier this morning.
Every single review, every legal scholar that I've been able to read said there's no case, there's no crime, it's a disgrace that it was allowed to happen. The judge, as you know, is highly conflicted, like nobody I've ever seen is conflicted. He should not be the judge, he should not be allowed to have anything to do with this case. He should be so far away from this case. Outside, if you take a look, it looks like we're Fort Knox. There's so many police and they don't allow people to come. You know, you're allowed to have friendly protests, but we're not allowed to have anything here.
The prosecution's star witness Michael Cohen is back on the witness stand today for more cross-examination by Trump's legal team.
Defense attorneys are expected to focus on how Cohen previously pleaded guilty to tax fraud charges and how he lied in the process.
One of Trump's lawyers began by bringing up Jeremy Rosenberg, a now retired detective with the DA's office who is close to Cohen.
Today, more of Trump's allies are in court to support him, including Congress members Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and Bob Good. Trump Organization executive Alan Garten is also in court, no longer considered a witness. Trump is asking New York's High Court to intervene in his fight over the gag order in his New York trial.
Trump lawyers filed a notice of appeal yesterday. The document is sealed, but a Trump campaign spokesperson said it's a request to the Court of Appeals.
The spokesperson called the gag order unconstitutional and un-American. He called it a, quote, third world authoritarian tactic. On Tuesday, a 5-judge panel of the mid-level appeals court said Judge Merchan made the right call. They said Trump's statements posed a significant threat to the integrity of witness testimony.
Last week, Merchan fined Trump $10,000 for violating the gag order and said he could face jail time if he did it again.
Trump is also appealing a verdict in E. Jean Carroll's defamation case against him. He wants to overturn the $83 million judgment.
Carroll sued Trump for defamation over statements he made denying her allegations of sexual assault. An attorney for Trump wrote yesterday that Trump is appealing all orders and rulings that led to the final judgment last month.
Trump said the verdict was, quote, absolutely ridiculous and politically motivated. Carroll's lawyer did not immediately comment on Trump's appeal. In the Trump criminal trial, the defense has been focusing on past statements Cohen has made to show that the jury that he can't be believed. Cohen's testimony is crucial to the prosecution's charges that Trump falsified business records. We turn now to our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards, for more on Cohen's testimony. Arlene, what points is the defense focusing on in their cross-examination of Cohen today?
Well, they're starting off this morning by talking about the times that he has said he wanted to get revenge against Trump. And they point to his podcast, Mea Culpa, which he has testified previously that he does this 6 days a week, in which he talks a lot about Trump. And they point out instances where he has said, he wants to get revenge against Trump. He'll be glad when Trump goes to prison. He thanked the DA's office for indicting him. And he admits to all of this. He admits to saying these things, and he admits to several other statements that he's made on that broadcast that says that he wants to get revenge against Trump. And they played a couple of the recordings for the jury. Now, they also get into the lies that he's told. And he admits that he's told many lies in court and to Congress, and he says that, he did this because he was protecting Trump. And then finally, we're hoping this afternoon they're going to get into this claim that Trump falsified business records, which is what this case is really all about. And Cohen testified on Tuesday that Trump had falsified the business records. So we want to see how the defense is going to handle that later today.
Okay, so you just mentioned that the defense focused on the number of lies that Cohen told under oath, and that Cohen blamed Trump for his lies. So were there any instances where Cohen actually admits to lying but doesn't blame Trump?
Well, in 2018, the FBI raided his apartment in relation to a tax evasion investigation that they were conducting. And at that time, Cohen was in a partnership with someone else with a taxi business. And that person was cooperating with the FBI. So when Cohen got to court, he admitted to the judge. He said, I'm guilty. I did commit tax evasion, and I take responsibility for my actions. But after the sentencing and after he went to jail, then he started to say, I should never have been criminally charged, that this was all the prosecutor's fault. They forced me to plead guilty because they said if I didn't, within 48 hours, they were going to indict me and my wife. And then he said the judge was corrupt. He blamed the judge, that the judge should never have sentenced him to 36 months in prison when other prisoners who did worse than he did only got a year. So, they're showing a pattern here where he blames everybody else, not just Trump, but he blames everybody else for his problems and for his lies. And then he later admits that, he's told several lies over the years, and he's blamed several other people over the years, including his accountant. So now they're on a break, but when they come back, they will get into, they might get into this statement that he made, or this admission that he made, that he sometimes tells certain people to erase the email communications they have with him. So they started talking about that before the break, so we'll see what happens with that.
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes right now, but yeah, well, that's for another day. Thank you, Arlene.
All right, thank you.
Updates. Thank you. And Vice President Kamala Harris has agreed to participate in a vice presidential debate this summer. A Biden-Harris campaign official confirmed today that Harris accepted an invitation from CBS News for a vice presidential debate.
The debate will take place in studio on either July 23rd or August 13th. Former President Donald Trump has not yet named a running mate.
But CBS News confirmed that it also extended the offer to the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign has not yet accepted the invitation.
The tax evasion case against Hunter Biden goes to trial in June. Special counsel David Weiss is set to present over 300 exhibits. Those range from text messages to financial records, according to a recently filed court document. The items include money transfers to women, emails from ex-wife Kathleen Biden, tax forms, and divorce settlements. Hunter Biden was indicted last December by a California grand jury with 9 counts of tax offenses. The indictment accuses Biden of spending almost $1.5 million on a lavish lifestyle, including on escorts and drugs, and of not fulfilling his tax obligations between 2016 and 2019.
And moving on to the upcoming presidential election, President Biden is set to hold a fundraiser in June in Los Angeles with some big names, according to multiple media outlets.
He's tapping the star power of former President Barack Obama and some entertainment giants.
Let's learn more about fundraising efforts and where the candidates stand from NTD's Kevin Hogan at the Data Hub. What do you have for us, Kevin?
Yes, Chris and Evelyn, this would not be the first time that President Biden is holding these glitzy fundraisers. We look back in March in New York when former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton were by his side, raising $26 million. And also this event in LA next month is going to feature George Clooney and Julia Roberts, big names in the entertainment industry, help him grow his fundraising base there. And also there's going to be 2 Academy Award winners that are going to lend their names for text messages and emails to help these donors make their decision to support President Biden. And we look back in April in Florida, former President Trump held a fundraiser where he says he raised $50 million. That would be, if true, the biggest single event fundraiser in the record books here. We're going to look at some of the top line numbers for total funds raised for these candidates. Now keep in mind, this is for the principal campaign committees. This is not all the money that they have access to. For example, former President Trump's MAGA PAC and his Save America PAC, where he's spending tens of millions of dollars to pay for his legal fees. That's not included here. But let's see. $170 million. President Biden is leading the pack here. Big money there. Also, now former President Trump pulling in big money. $114 million. Still has a long way to go to close that gap. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. coming in at $33 million. He has the name recognition. He is a Kennedy, but he just doesn't have the connection to one of these national major parties that these other candidates do here. We're going to look at the war chest now. This is the cash on hand. Very important number right here, because this is going to be a metric for donors to look at in conjunction with their polls to see if their campaigns are being managed well. President Biden leading the pack once again, $85 million in that cash on hand. And this is all according to the latest FEC filing. Former President Trump, $45 million that he still has left, and RFK Jr., $6 million. This can be used to run ads. This can be used to pay for travel expenses, hire staff, things like that. It's probably not going to sway those dyed-in-the-wool Democrats or Trump's MAGA base, but it might be able to help access those voters that just haven't made up their minds yet. But money isn't everything, and that's what we see right here. We just have to look back to the 2016 presidential race where candidate Hillary Clinton raised over $500 million, $585 million, compared to Trump's $350 million, yet she lost the race to former President Trump. This is now the segment we're going to look at something extremely important to this race, the swing states. And now we're going to take the swing state pulse. Trump holds the lead in all of them but one state. I'm going to point this out to you. Wisconsin is a state where these 2 candidates, President Biden and former President Trump, are tied. 38 points for each of them. Biden was recently there in the Racine area where Microsoft was announcing a $3.3 billion investment for its AI data center. Not Biden's investment, but it aligns with his Investing in America pledge, and that's why he was there. And it's on the same land, by the way, that Trump deal, the broker deal with the Foxconn Taiwan manufacturing company was, that he wanted to get about 13,000 jobs, but it only panned out to be a fraction, about 1,000 there. Economy is very important to Wisconsinites here. Pennsylvania, Trump leading Biden 4 points, 40% to 36%. Again, leading him in Arizona, 42 to 33. That's a 9-point lead there. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being very consistent, pulling in about 10% of the vote in all of these swing states. Let's look at some more here. This is all according to the New York Times Siena poll. We have Michigan, very important swing state, 36% for Biden, 38% for Trump, 2-point lead there. And now we look at Georgia, a 8-point lead, 31 for Biden, 39 for former President Trump here. And Nevada, the big spread, 14 points. We look at 27% for Biden, 41% for former President Trump there. And again, RFK Jr. being very consistent with his 10% of the vote here. And that's a wrap for us today. I'm going to toss this back to you, Evelyn and Chris. Thank you.
Coming up, a group of bipartisan lawmakers taking a critical step forward in regulating artificial intelligence. Hear more on what Senate Leader Chuck Schumer calls a roadmap for addressing AI.
And speaking of roadmaps, New York City is getting serious about curbing its rat population. The summit will bring together experts to discuss the best options for dealing with the problem.
Caught on camera, Florida police helping locate a lost girl wandering the beach. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shin-Yun.
People often ask, where's the best place in Korea to do business?
Chongbuk Free Economic Zone, of course. Take the first step to a successful investment and enjoy a bright future with CP Petchu.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani potrzebuють вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Thanks for staying with us. House Republican leadership is urging the Senate to pick up a bill condemning Biden's policy of pausing weapons shipments to Israel. The bill has not yet passed the House floor, but is set to test Democratic unity around the White House's foreign policy.
Our correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Capitol. Luis, what are Republican objectives with this bill?
Good afternoon. Well, just as you mentioned, House Republican leadership took to the steps of Capitol Hill this morning to urge the Senate to pick up the Israel Security Assistance Support Act. But this bill has not yet passed the House floor. It is expected to have a vote at 4 p.m. Republicans have the majority in the House, and the bill is expected to pass as there is Republican unity in support for Israel. But Republican leaders also touted bipartisan support. That means that it is expected that some Democrats in the House will support this bill and, of course, go against Biden's foreign policy towards Israel. The bill would force the if passed, would force the White House to send all congressionally approved security aid to Israel within the next 15 days. Now, the White House and House Democrats who support Biden's Israel policy argue that the bill is unnecessary since the Biden administration approved earlier this week a weapons transfer of $1 billion to Israel. To that logic, Speaker Mike Johnson had this to say. Let's listen.
That's a pittance. That is a window dressing. That is to try to give him political cover. Those are things that were already determined a long time ago. We just passed the aid package just less than 3 weeks ago. And now they're defying the will of Congress. This was an overwhelming vote here on this floor, as you saw, the support for Israel.
House Republican leadership also had the chance to react to the then breaking news that the White House had invoked executive privilege to keep from the public the recordings of the interview in between Special Counsel Robert Hur and President Joe Biden as part of the Justice Department investigation on Biden's handling of classified materials. Let's listen to what Speaker Johnson had to say to this breaking news this morning.
The American people will not be able to hear why prosecutors felt the President of the United States was, in Special Counsel Robert Hur's words, a, quote, elderly man with a poor memory, and thus...
Now, coincidentally, the House Oversight and House Judiciary Committee begin today the markup of a resolution that would hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for withholding these recordings and other documents from the House of Representatives investigation into President Joe Biden as part of the impeachment investigation against President Joe Biden. To this resolution and the markup of this resolution that might hold in contempt of Congress Attorney General Merrick Garland, this is what the Attorney General had to say.
There have been a series of unprecedented and, frankly, unfounded attacks on the Justice Department. This request, this effort to use contempt as a method of obtaining our sensitive law enforcement files is just the most recent. The effort to threaten to defund our investigations, these are wrong.
So it remains to be seen if this resolution that would hold in contempt of Congress Attorney General Merrick Garland will reach the House floor and will have a vote on it. And it also remains to be seen if the House approves the Israel Security Assistance Support Act and if the Senate picks it up. But for sure that these debates will draw some divisions among House Democrats as it is an election year and they are uneasy with Biden's Israel policy. Back to you, Chris and Steph.
All right, Luis Martinez on Capitol Hill, thank you so much.
Thank you, Luis. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is rejecting what he calls a radical climate agenda. He signed a bill yesterday to make climate change a lesser priority in the state. The new law is set to ban power-generating wind turbines offshore and near the state's coastline. It will also boost expansion of natural gas and reduce regulation on gas pipelines in the state. The measure would also launch a study of small nuclear reactor technology and enhance electric grid security. The law takes effect on July 1st. DeSantis also signed an unrelated bill targeting China. That measure would prohibit the state from investing public funds in companies linked to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, newly released data shows border encounters in the Southwest dropped 6% last month. According to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, border encounters in San Diego, California were up nearly 49% in April. But overall, border encounters last month were down almost 30% compared to April of 2023.
A CBP official said in a statement the agency is prioritizing resources and personnel to impacted sectors along the border. It says it's working to ensure safe, swift, and orderly processing in order to maximize expedited removals.
North Carolina lawmakers advance a bill to ban masks in public, even for health reasons. It's aimed at cracking down on anti-Israel protesters seeking to hide their identity. The bill essentially repeals COVID-era medical exemptions for the state's existing mask ban, and it elevates the legal penalty for protesters who are arrested while masked. State Democrats wanted the bill to allow for medical exceptions, particularly for people with compromised immune systems or undergoing cancer treatment. Republican lawmakers expressed that law enforcement would use common sense when applying the law. North Carolina's public mask ban goes back to the 1950s. The laws were originally meant to discourage Ku Klux Klan membership.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams has made it known that he really hates rats. And now the city's first director of rodent mitigation, or rat czar, Kathleen Corrady, is planning the city's first summit on how to deal with rodents. A press release from City Hall said experts from across the country will join together in September to advance the science of urban rat management. The Department of Sanitation reported earlier this month New York City has made strides in rodent mitigation since Corrady was hired last year. City data shows rat sightings reported were down across the city in 12 of the 13 months, and rat sightings are down 14% in rat mitigation zones. Those are areas where the city has spent extra time trying to reduce the rodent population. Apple is rolling out new updates later this year to make its mobile devices easier for people with disabilities to use. One of the new features is eye tracking.
Devices will use their cameras to track eye movements, and artificial intelligence will translate them into on-screen movements that navigate the operating system.
Apple will also launch something it calls music haptics. It lets devices produce vibrations that sync with music to help people with hearing difficulties enjoy it more.
Apple also has a new system it says can help people use devices in moving vehicles without experiencing motion sickness. It uses a series of animated dots on the side of the screen that move in a way that helps reduce conflicting motion signals to your brain.
Also, devices will be able to use machine learning to recognize unique speech patterns that makes it easier for people with conditions that affect speech to still use vocal shortcuts. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and a bipartisan group of senators are looking to shape how Congress tackles AI. The group announced a series of guidelines yesterday.
This policy roadmap summarizes our findings and lays out a host, a huge number actually, of policy priorities our group believes merit bipartisan consideration by this Congress and beyond.
Blueprint recommends putting at least $32 billion a year towards AI research and development.
It also tasks multiple Senate committees to create safeguards for AI to address some of its biggest risks.
These risks include AI-enabled discrimination, job displacement, and election interference. Some proposals address creating a national data privacy law.
A proposed law would provide consumers more control over their personal information. Schumer earlier said with November approaching, passing measures to protect elections from AI-driven interference may be a top priority.
Losing a child in a crowded place is terrifying for parents. In Pinellas County, Florida, last week, deputies responded to a call about a lost girl at a beach. Body cam and dash cam video captured the moment a deputy discovered the girl wandering the beach.
I'm Jeff. Are you okay? Rox, need a hug? Yeah. All right. It's going to be okay. Let's go get you to mom, all right?
The deputy approaches the little girl and asks if she's okay. She tells the deputy, "I miss my mommy."
The deputy comforts the child and soon reunites her with her mother. Police suggest always taking a photo of children in the outfit they are wearing if there's going to be a crowd in case they get lost.
And coming up, police clear an anti-Israel encampment at a university in Chicago. See footage of their operation this morning.
And an American soldier being held in Russia has reportedly pleaded guilty to theft charges. The details and background regarding his current situation.
Facebook and Instagram are facing a probe by EU regulators. Concerns exist over potential breaches of child safety rules and addiction among children. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
Welcome back. An update on the anti-Israel protests on college campuses. Police moved in to clear the encampment at DePaul University in Chicago.
Police began dismantling the encampment in the early morning after the school's president told students to leave the area or face arrest.
All of the protesters at the encampment voluntarily left the area when police arrived. The police reported no confrontations and no resistance, but 2 people were arrested outside the encampment for obstruction of traffic.
The move to clear the campus comes less than a week after the school said it had reached an impasse with the school's protesters.
Separately, some students and faculty were detained at the University of California, Irvine on Wednesday after police removed an encampment and anti-Israel protesters briefly took over a lecture hall.
A floating pier built by U.S. troops will soon allow delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. According to U.S. Central Command, the Pier traveled yesterday from the port of Ashdod, about 30 miles away. Personnel anchored the floating pier to a beach in Gaza.
CENTCOM's deputy commander stressed yesterday the pier is not intended to replace land routes into Gaza and said there would be no U.S. military boots on the ground in Gaza. Trucks are expected to begin moving the humanitarian aid ashore in the coming days. The United Nations and World Food Program will distribute the aid.
Russia and China continue to strengthen their so-called no-limits partnership. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China, meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping.
Putin and Xi in Beijing today pledged to deepen their strategic partnership as Russian troops advance in Ukraine.
Beijing continues to supply Moscow with high-tech components for weapon production to bypass Western sanctions. It also buys the bulk of sanctioned Russian oil.
Russia-China military ties have also tightened. Joint war games have been held involving troops, naval drills, and long-range bomber patrols. Putin says he will discuss the war in Ukraine with Xi later today.
This is Putin and Xi's fourth face-to-face meeting since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Xi declared what he called a no-limits partnership with Putin just weeks before the war started over 2 years ago. The Chinese regime's authoritarian model crushes political opposition, human rights, and freedom of speech.
Retired Colonel Grant Newsham told NTD the wars in Ukraine and Gaza distract the U.S. from any serious attention to China. Here's Newsham on the Xi-Putin relationship.
The more the fighting goes on in Ukraine, the more the Americans have to focus on that, and things are getting pretty dicey there. You're emptying out American arsenals. The same thing goes with Gaza. It's a huge political issue in the United States. It's caused chaos in parts of the U.S., certainly on some college campuses. It has handcuffed U.S. political movement. The administration clearly is trying to thread a needle unsuccessfully and play both sides of this.
An American soldier held in Russia has reportedly pleaded guilty to theft charges. He's now cooperating with investigators. Russian state news RIA reported on the update today, citing a representative of the local interior ministry.
Gordon Black is a U.S. staff sergeant. He was detained in the far eastern city of Vladivostok on May 2nd. He's suspected of stealing from a woman he was in a relationship. The court ordered he remain detained until July.
The federal government has warned U.S. citizens against all travel to Russia. That's due to the potential for harassment and the arbitrary enforcement of the law against Americans.
A handful of U.S. citizens have been detained since Russia invaded Ukraine, including Evan Gershkovich, a Wall Street Journal reporter who was detained in 2023 on charges of spying.
And we're shifting gears now. We have some short headlines from Germany and other European countries. Slovakia's prime minister is now in stable condition after an attempted assassination, but officials say it's still very serious. We also know that a suspect was charged with attempted murder.
Prime Minister Robert Fico was shot multiple times on Wednesday. He was on the street greeting the public after a government meeting.
The country's interior minister said an early investigation showed the suspect had political motives, but later described him as a lone wolf with no membership in a political group.
Slovakia's state broadcaster said the suspect was a senior citizen amateur writer who wrote poetry and novels. Slovakian politicians are urging unity among each other. European leaders, including the presidents of both Ukraine and Russia, have condemned the attack.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky traveled to the northeastern city of Kharkiv today. That's amid a strong Russian offensive in that part of the country.
Zelensky says he held a meeting with the military while there. He described the situation as extremely difficult, but controlled in general.
Zelensky has postponed all upcoming foreign visits amid Russia's offensive. That included a planned trip to Spain and Portugal this week. His press secretary says they'll arrange new dates for the trips. NATO's military committee chief says more help is on the way to Ukraine. The committee met today to discuss the implementation of defense plans. They also talked about logistics, air and missile defense, military-industrial capacity, and more.
This comes as Ukraine is defending Russia's offensive in the Kharkiv region while also holding the line in the Donbas region.
The military committee chief today said that help can't come too soon. He says time in Ukraine is not measured in weeks or months, but in human lives. And a powerful explosion ripped through an apartment building in Germany this morning. The incident left 3 people dead and 16 others injured. 2 of the wounded are still fighting for their lives.
The cause of the explosion inside the ground floor kiosk was not immediately known. A fire also broke out after the blast. Several parked cars were destroyed and debris was seen across a large area.
According to Düsseldorf's fire department, over 100 firefighters were deployed to the scene. Criminal police have taken up an investigation. EU regulators today announced they'll investigate Meta platforms Facebook and Instagram. That's over potential breaches of rules relating to child safety. The EU is concerned that Meta's algorithms may stimulate behavioral addiction in children, among other concerns.
The European Union's Digital Services Act took effect last year. Tech companies must now take stronger action against illegal and harmful content on their platforms. Violations of the law can lead to hefty fines reaching as high as 6% of a company's annual global turnover.
Taiwan's president-elect William Lai will be sworn into office next Monday. The White House is sending an unofficial delegation to the island this weekend to celebrate the inauguration. Orville Schell, the director of the Center on U.S.-China Relations at Asia Society, said Washington is walking on a delicate tightrope between deterring China and supporting Taiwan.
Well, I think if you go to Taiwan or Asia, I think everybody is painfully aware that when a big power that's filled with grievance like Russia or China starts talking about invading another territory because they view it as theirs, it's very dangerous. Does that mean Xi Jinping is about to invade Taiwan? I don't think so. But it does mean that we have to be very careful in terms of our strategy to do everything possible to deter that impulse, because it is.
The Biden administration announced yesterday that 2 former senior U.S. officials and a scholar will be headed to Taiwan. It added that the move will certainly upset China, but it's unlikely to draw an excessive response.
The trip comes as the U.S. and China try to stabilize relations. Washington has made it clear that it doesn't support Taiwan independence, but will deter Beijing's aggression toward Taiwan under U.S. law.
Beijing sees Taiwan as part of China and a core interest, although the Chinese regime has never ruled the island. William Lai, the next Taiwanese president, is known for his tough on China policies.
The White House announced new moves today to protect domestic solar factories from Chinese competition.
First, scrapping a tariff exemption for double-sided panels. The panels only accounted for a small part of the market 2 years ago, but now these parts have become essential for many solar projects.
Biden will also end a waiver on tariffs for solar panels made by Chinese companies in Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. The White House also plans to make it easier to claim a subsidy for projects that use at least 40% American-made products.
According to S&P Global, solar panel imports have surged by over 80% in the past 2 years, with most of the goods from Chinese companies.
President Biden's new moves could help him in the November election on multiple fronts, including economy, climate measures, and deterring China to protect the U.S.
The U.S. State Department has removed Cuba from the list of countries that aren't fully cooperating with the U.S. on counterterrorism efforts. The State Department says there were multiple factors that contributed to Cuba's change of status, including the fact that the U.S. and Cuba resumed law enforcement cooperation in 2023. While the Cuban government celebrated the decision Wednesday, they suggested it wasn't enough. North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Venezuela remain on the list of the countries that are not cooperating on counterterrorism efforts. Heading to break, a race to climb a 40-foot tower made of thousands of plastic buns It's the high point of Hong Kong's century-old Bun Festival. See who took home the championship.
And a special treat for this year's champion of the Westminster's Kennel Club Dog Show. See the miniature poodle enjoy a steak lunch at a New York restaurant. More shortly here on NTD News Today.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with YRefi, and they don't care about what happened with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com. YRefi, do well by doing good.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. A few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did.
Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor today, and your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
Welcome back. At the stroke of midnight on Thursday, 12 courageous participants scrambled up a 45-foot-high tower covered in 9,000 plastic buns, marking the climax of the Bun Festival in Hong Kong. 9 male and 3 female climbers competed to fill their bags with buns, trying to accumulate the most points within a 3-minute time limit. The participant who successfully retrieved the bun from the top of the tower would bring luck to their family.
Janet Kung, an ice climbing athlete, and fireman Yip Kin Man were crowned the Bun Queen and King of the competition.
Tens of thousands of Hong Kong residents and tourists gathered on the tiny island of Cheung Chau to savor the lucky buns from local cake shops and to watch a vibrant floating colors parade. And also, after the stunning display of northern lights this weekend, the sun isn't done just yet. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory constantly watches the sun, Yesterday afternoon, it captured a photograph of the strongest solar flare yet from the current solar cycle.
The solar flare came from the same region that triggered last weekend's geomagnetic storm watch, the first in nearly 20 years. The flares usually occur in active regions of the sun that include the presence of strong magnetic fields. They can impact radio, power grids, and communications.
Flares can also pose threats to astronauts and spacecraft, though NASA found there was no risk to astronauts aboard the International Space Station last week.
Now for a new episode of Strong Mind and Body. We'll find out how olive oil can protect the brain, ward off cancer, and reduce inflammation. Here's Gina Marie.
According to numerous studies, olive oil has remarkable health benefits. Research indicates that it has anti-cancer properties, protects the brain, reduces inflammation and pain, lowers blood lipids and blood sugar, and promotes gut microbiota health. Olive oil is extracted from the fruit of the olive tree. It is the primary plant oil used in Mediterranean cuisine. Its history dates back to ancient Greek and Roman times. It was considered a sacred food and cosmetic product. The main component of olive oil is monounsaturated fatty acids. This superfat can reduce bad cholesterol and increase good cholesterol. It reduces the risk of arteriosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. Olive oil protects not only the heart but also the brain. Last year, a research team from Harvard University presented a study at the American Society for Nutrition's annual meeting. The researchers analysed dietary questionnaires and death records of more than 90,000 Americans over a 30-year period. Those who consume more than half a tablespoon per day had a 28% lower risk of dying from dementia. Another significant benefit of olive oil is its anti-cancer properties. A meta-analysis of 45 studies found that people who consume olive oil daily have a 31% lower risk of any cancer compared to those who consume it less frequently. Olive oil contains polyphenols with anti-inflammatory effects. People who consume olive oil regularly experience reduced chronic inflammation and joint pain. This led to a decreased reliance on anti-inflammatory drugs. And a few points in closing. Olive oil has a low smoke point, so it's best used for dressing cold dishes or added after cooking. This retains its nutritional value and delicate flavour. Extra virgin olive oil refers to the purest and most natural olive oil. It's directly pressed from the olive fruit without any processing or refining. It retains the most nutrients and doesn't contain any chemicals or additives.
And a special treat for this year's champion of the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, miniature poodle Sage gets to enjoy a lunch at New York's Bar Bulud restaurant.
Welcome to Bar Bulud, and certainly a first. But I've done a lot of things in my life, but I never had a winner of the Westminster. So congratulations, Sage. Congratulations also to Kathy, to Kat, and to the Westminster Club for choosing to be here at Bar Bulud to celebrate Sage.
Today it was a steak, medium rare, a Wagyu beef from Texas, from Charbauer Farm in Midland, Texas, for the winner, Sage, that win the Westminster shows.
Sage won the grand prize Tuesday in the most prestigious competition among purebred canines in the United States.
And she became the 4th miniature poodle to claim Best in Show in the 148-year history of the contest.
Sage's handler, Kaz Hosaka, said it was his 45th year participating at the Westminster Dog Show and the last of his career.
This year's competition drew a field of contenders representing 200 breeds from all 50 states, as well as 12 other countries. There was an unusual delay during Wednesday night's soccer matchup between Philadelphia and New York. The crowd went wild when a raccoon somehow got loose on the home pitch of the Philadelphia Union in Chester.
The match between Philadelphia and the New York City Football Club was delayed for about 2.5 minutes. You can see staff running around chasing the raccoon around the field. One even had a trash can.
Crews finally escorted the furry visitor off the field. League officials say the raccoon was later safely released. Unfortunately for the Philly fans, though, New York went on to prevail 2-1.
And the New York State Thruway Authority needs the public's help in naming 4 falcon chicks. The tiny birds recently hatched in a nest box atop the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge in New York State. Students from Rockland and Westchester counties submitted more than 100 names for the contest. A panel of judges then whittled it down to 10. Some of the finalist names include Amelia Berdelia, Beacons, Estrella, Millennium Falcon, and Taylor Swoop.
Oh my goodness. People can vote for their favorites on the Bridge's website through May 22nd. The 4 winning names will be announced the following day.
That's right. And for around-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. We're wrapping up our show right here.
That's right. Be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.